ahead and let's get this interview started. Welcome everybody at home. We are so glad to have you join us tonight. We're looking forward to this hour with our great friend Paula Crider. My name is Carole Grooms, and I am the current president of the American School Band Directors Association. And we have, along with Paula Crider tonight, a panel of active ASBDA members from around the country. We have Tracy Humphreys from North Carolina and Kathy Finsky from Missouri, and Rachel Maxwell in Illinois, and Rich Stickler in Georgia. And we're all going to kind of share the fun asking Paula some questions. So I'm going to start us out and kind of go over Paula's history with everyone and just sort of check off and let her confirm that we have this right and hopefully set the stage for some questions that go beyond her early life and how she got started. So Paula, you feel free to interrupt me and throw in a story or a correction or clarification. So I understand, well, I know you're a fellow Southerner, and understand Bay St. Louis, Mississippi was the hometown, right?
Correct.
And I know that from you telling me about some stories yourself in the past about traveling to visit relatives in Tennessee, that you had relatives around and many places and got to travel and got some pretty nice experiences as a kid seeing the world outside Southern Mississippi, which is not always the case. Was that in the 1960s that you were growing up there?
Yeah, correct.
Yes. And I also have heard the wonderful story about how you started band much later than most students as the junior in high school, after being an athletic student and getting frustrated with the basketball coach who was just not cutting the mustard. And literally, it's to hear the story. I think there's a theme here and what I'm going to go over, and which I'll wrap it all in. You serendipitously fell into this opportunity to learn the trumpet halfway through your junior year in high school, which is quite late. It wasn't a plan, right?
No.
Yeah. So, and then I believe I heard you tell about you just happened to cross paths on family travels with a trumpet teacher, one of your first one, an Italian man who had something to do with someone at the embassy in Washington, where you just happened to be visiting and you got lessons from this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It must have been life-changing.
He was a retired trumpet from La Scala, so he kind of knew what
gosh.
he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you stumbled across him because you happen to be traveling with your family, and yeah, serendipity again. And I also know that you were interested in just music, but you could have gone in any number of directions. That math and physics and science, and your family was your father, and you had family members in the sciences as well. And that was kind of the assumed path for you, but it had to be a school with band. And you ended up at the University of Southern Mississippi. Well, Bill Moody was the director at that time. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, still a great school. And started out with a double major and ended up with a triple major, correct?
Well, I had a minor in physics. I had a double major in music and English. So, yeah, just a double major.
It's just physics, no big deal. And then when Bill Moody went to Texas, you followed him.
I did.
Yes, and talking about your high school jobs and when or your teaching jobs in the secondary schools, I should say, your first job, if I remember correctly, was actually your student teaching that turned into a substitute teacher gig just days in. So your student teaching was baptism by fire, right?
Indeed.
What age were those students?
They were high school. Well, actually, I taught beginner. It was a small school. I taught from 6th
Everybody.
through 12. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
Good way to start.
I can't imagine. And thank goodness when we're that age, we don't know what we don't know and just do it, And then see that was outside Hattiesburg, I believe.
That's correct.
And then you followed Bill Moody when he became the director of bands at the University of Texas, Austin. And you were a graduate student there also, working on your master's degree, and somehow get recruited to teach at Allen. Was it middle school or junior high then?
Junior high.
Junior high at that time, yeah. At the same time, I can't imagine being a full-time teacher and going to UTA and working on your master's at the same time, but you did it. And I've heard some stories about how that was a very interesting experience, being a minority student body, and you had to learn how to interact and communicate and meet the needs of a community that was very different from the one you grew up in, correct? It was very timely today. And had great success there, I know. And then from there, went to Crockett High School, where you were there for 12 years. And I believe you were the first woman with was it 5A, one of the largest band programs in Texas, which had to be, people had to take note of that. And I know you were very successful during those years. And then fell into serendipity again after those 12 years, assistant director of the Longhorn Band at the University of Texas, and ended up staying there, was it 17 years all total?
Right.
Yeah, for a stellar career that we've all heard so much about. And I know it's not something that you went seeking. It is something that came to you and just happened, and there you were, ready for it. And you did everything at UTA. Symphonic band.
Not UTA.
It was just UT.
UTA is University of Texas at Arlington.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm differentiating from, see, I'm the Tennessean here, and I'm differentiating from Knoxville. UT, not Tennessee.
As Jay Julia would say, the other UT.
The other, yes. He did. I remember hearing him say that. Yeah. But you did it all there. You conducted the symphonic band, the marching band, the concert bands. You taught undergrad conducting, brass methods, wind literature, supervised student teachers, and probably 50 other things in those years, and retired from there in 1999.
Correct.
And when I think of you, and I think of you being as busy in recent years as any of us would be teaching, so I think your retirement has not been retirement as such. I'm professor emeritus now, we know. We see you all the time, guest conducting all-state bands, giving clinic presentations. You've written a book, The Conductor's Legacy, which is wonderful, and articles galore, several of which I've saved over the years in my files, that just all kinds of wisdom. You've been past president of all sorts of important organizations, among them the National Band Association, American Bandmasters Association, and you've been affiliated with Con Selmer for the last number of recent years as an educational consultant. And I know that gets you around everywhere. So in all of that, there's so many things that seem to fall in place, and you're in the right place at the right time. And, there's that saying that luck, there's really no such thing as luck. It's when opportunity and preparation intersect. And I know these were all these times where your particular environment that you were in, or whatever you were doing, you had some serendipitous opportunity. And there were a number of occasions that I think anyone would consider a fork in the road, where you had to make a decision. I have an opportunity. Do I do this or do I do this? And, starting from, I guess, in high school, when you walked out of the basketball practice and said, I'm done with this. Have you ever thought about those times and thought about when you came to those fork in the road moments? There's so many of them. Had you chosen differently, what would have been different? And have you thought about the significance of those moments over your years of life?
Well, first, Carole, I'm going to take you on tour because you just did a Reader's Digest version of my career. Honestly, I have not thought about that very much, simply because I'm always looking forward. I'm always trying to find, the next thing to do, the next great piece of music, and so forth. So I don't look back much, but if I were to look back, it would, it just seems that I'm doing what I was destined to do.
And you had the wisdom to not question it. or the
Oh, I don't know about
intuition
wisdom,
or
but
intuition,
yeah.
something,
Well,
but no doubt preparation was there and
oh,
opportunity, and they met.
yeah. I mean, you don't have those opportunities. I'm always amazed. Sometimes young directors will say, how'd you get to conduct that all-state band? Like, how can I get that invitation? And my response is always, I worked my anatomy off.
At
And
any given moment in time for what
yeah,
you were doing at that moment in time, and then these opportunities are the natural consequence.
yeah. I mean, you don't, and you guys know this. You don't think about that. You don't go in every day and say, "Oh, I've got a great band program or this," or you're always trying to figure out what you can do to make it a better experience for the kids. And that keeps you busy. You don't look back too much.
Mhm. It just struck me, as I was reading through everything you'd done, trying to put a brief thing that, wow, what if she said, no, I don't want to play the trumpet, I want to try the flute? Or what if you'd said, oh no, I can't do this, my student teaching thing, I can't become the teacher? Or what if, when they called and said, we want you to come to Crockett High School, you said, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. That's obviously it's not your personality. But there's so many times that, someone of a lesser will might not have had such a trajectory. Your trajectory is amazing, really.
Well,
But
and it doesn't mean that I didn't think about that. I mean, when I was offered the Crockett job, I sure as heck asked myself, am I ready for this?
were you scared?
Oh yeah. Well, scared as I was really nervous because I knew the pressures everybody was looking to see if a woman could do it.
Hmm.
And I felt that if I failed, there wouldn't be another opportunity for a female to do that for a while. And so, that aside, that was not premier in my
Hmm.
thoughts. But I mean, that's something that I wanted to make sure that I proved myself. And we all do that. And that's not a
Yeah,
bad thing.
failure was not an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pass the baton to Rachel and let her follow up with a question.
Sure. Well, I'm going to follow up with a fun one. I'm going to start with the softball questions while we warm up. All right. So this is one where I'm curious, what is something that people likely do not know about you or suspect about you? Or if people think they know you, oh, I know all about Paula Crider, what's something that would throw them off? Like, what's like your, I don't know, your guilty pleasure or something like are you into like 70s punk music or I don't know. What is it? What's your thing?
What a good question. I I collect wines, as you might imagine by my background, and that is one of my passions is pairing wine with food. But another passion is skydiving, and you especially, and I haven't done it for a while, obviously, especially with all the COVID. But when you're flying out of a plane and 10,000 feet, you're not thinking too much about anything else, and it's a great release. But the funniest thing, and people are always surprised, it's like, well, tell me something I wouldn't imagine. I know how to operate a backhoe. I had a band parent once, and when I bought this property out here, I was clearing it, and I was trying to put a chain on the back of my car bumper, and he said, "Oh, I'll bring my backhoe out." And I don't know if any of you have ever driven a backhoe, or I should say, operated. It is so powerful. You want to plant a tree, it's good stuff. So, but what a great question. Thanks for that.
Well, I'm dying because I'm thinking you're going to be like your wine thing and you have a book club that you're in that no one knows you're famous or something. And instead you're like, no, and then on the side, I jump out of airplanes like everybody does when they retire. That was great. Okay. Next, Rich in Georgia is going to have our next question for you.
Excellent. Well, my dad was a pilot, Paula, and he always told me, he says, why jump out of a perfectly good airplane?
I hear that from pilots a
So I'm
lot.
sure you hear that all the time. But one of those things that I probably will do at some point in my life. I'm hoping to. It'd be great. So, I've of course I've seen you speak at many many different occasions, and unfortunately I've never had a chance to really sit down and talk with you and meet you for some reason, and I'm looking forward to future to be able to do that. But um, one of the things that I always took away from your speeches and what you talked about is being a lifelong learner. the importance of being a lifelong learner and having different passions and interests. Can you tell us more about your thoughts on the significance of that, or if there's anything that really impacted you that made you kind of make that your mantra or your philosophy about things?
Thanks for that question, because I think that real lifelong learners go beyond just music. Because when we're teaching kids, if we can't draw in other things, you have to say things 1,000 different ways to reach all of the kids. And one of the things that has really served me well, I love to read. And I'll read a good fiction. I just finished the last Amor Towles book, The Lincoln Highway, and it's beautifully written. But I'm also always reading something by a musician. I'm also, as I love science, so I'll have 4 or 5 books going at one time. And just and doing just what you said. I love sitting down and talking to people. And especially, I never talk to another musician that I don't come away with another idea or another way to say something. And so, and I think that lifelong learning, the best teachers I know are curious about the world. They're curious about, the tail that wags the world. And, you never stop doing that.
That's great. Excellent. I'm going to pass this over to Kathy.
Hi, Paul. It's so fun to be here with you today. I tell you, I've been talking to a lot of teachers in the last 2 years, and I see a lot of people who are just searching for some answers, and people who are even in dismay about the future of music education. And could you tell us some of your concerns possibly about the future of education, and even more so, do you have some advice for all of us after your years of being in this business of how we can maybe right the ship?
Great question. I was not a good advocate for music education as a young teacher. And it took me a while to figure out that piece of the puzzle. I was so busy with my own program that I wasn't doing what needed to be done, which was to educate non-musicians. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle that if we start even drawing in our own faculty. I remember we had an English teacher one time, fantastic English teacher, but she absolutely hated band. And there was probably a little jealousy there, because the kids would come in and talk about, the good things that they've been doing in band, and maybe not get as excited about Shakespeare as they should have been, because she taught it beautifully. So, I was talking to the kids one time. I said, what would you think about having like a teacher of the month? And your parents, we'll get some parents, and you'll have that teacher over to dinner, and then come to our Tuesday night concert band rehearsal. And the English teacher was the first one. And she was like, well, I don't have time to come to band rehearsal, but I'll stay there for 5 minutes. Well, I'd gotten out this old piece by Francis Macbeth called Sailors and Whales. Anybody familiar with it? It's a good piece. Every 9th grader in the world has to read Moby Dick. So I said, this passage, you're going to hear it in the music. Would you read it to the kids? And she did. And then this passage, and this is where and long story short, before long, she was coming on all of our band trips. She was our biggest fan. And the moral there was, whose fault was that? It was mine, to expect her to appreciate what we were doing without, going that extra step to educate her. And we're still really, really dear friends. And taking that one step further, I hear some of my colleagues my age saying, kids these days, they're self-centered, they're blah, but you've heard the whole litany. But I read a study about 2 months ago from USC, from a psychologist, that said there is absolutely no difference in the retention and attention span of kids nowadays than there was 50 years ago. They're wired differently. And we've got to figure out how to reach them in the age of computers and cell phones and yada, yada, yada. But and admittedly, I get to work with the best of the best now, because I'm doing honor bands, I'm working with adults as well as kids, and doing all state bands. But when I look at those young eyes, and they're sitting there just killing themselves to raise the standard and to play their instruments as well as they can, I think our country, if we old people will quit screwing it up, I think that the youth of America are going to have to save our country. Because if not, when their grandchildren are alive, we won't have water to drink, we won't have clean air, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm really positive about that. I think that I know how tough it is, and I understand your question, because everybody I've talked to has said, we lost a year. And what happened with the beginners and so on and so forth. But, kids are resilient, man. And if you keep raising the bar, they're going to stay right there with you. So, I think the future is really bright, and I'm really positive about that. But thanks for asking that question, because I get asked that a lot. I don't want to be one of these old fogies that's, back in the day. Back in the day when I was in band, when I started teaching, we'd had all these great method books that kids have right now. Or when I was in graduate school or started teaching, I had to, if I wanted kids to hear great players, I'd have to make tapes for them. And now, boom, YouTube, and you can hear any great performer in the world. So, there's a lot of good out there. Who's next?
Hang on, I'm supposed to know, and I'm just looking here. Sorry, thank you for that. That was excellent. I appreciate your wisdom, and as I said, we just need a lot of people being super positive right now, and I appreciate that from you. That's what I think.
Let's go to Tracy now.
Yep, I got it. I was looking. This is Tracy. She's next.
Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. I know a lot of female band directors, including myself, have looked to you as a role model, and I want to ask what you would like women band directors, particularly our younger generation, to know about you and your journey, and what we could learn from the experiences that you've had.
Well, I think this is true of women, and it's true of any minority. To be considered equal, you have to be far better than average. And it's wrong, but it's a fact of life. And I think that if we look at that as a positive, that it makes us stronger and it makes us better. And I always tell young women and young men, don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do whatever you want to do, and be whomever you want to be, because the world is full of naysayers. It's so easy, it's so easy to criticize things and put things down. But it is those who are positive and show the right way to do things and show the potential of excellence that are going to make a difference in this world. And I am very, very prejudiced, but there's not another discipline in the world besides music that can teach as much as we can about beauty, about humanity, about caring for one another. I'm going to get some buttons, and it's just like, make America kind again. But we teach that every day. Our kids get along, right? Because we teach them to get along. And I think, and it is harder. I've been in situations, I did an All-State a couple of years ago where all the high school directors were guys. But we went to the band director party after All-State, and their wives were there, and one of them came up and said, "How did you get to be a high school band director? They won't let us do anything but elementary music," which of course made my blood boil. And I said, "Tell your husband you have to move to another state." Boom. I don't think it'll happen, but and it is an upward battle. But you think about it, and look at the ladies I'm looking at on this screen. You're high achievers. You've made your path. And I know you have worked and worked and worked to do that. And, that's just what it takes.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I don't know if Carole wants it next, or I'm sending it back to Rachel. So
I actually have
let's let it go back to Rachel.
Yeah, I have a question that kind of partners with what you just spoke about. Now, this actually came to me when I was reading your bio that Carole had sent out, but early in your career, you're at Allen Junior High, and that had a large minority population. And that was early in your career. Well, that's something that I think as band directors, we need to better understand. 95% of the band directors in the United States are white. Minority students are the fastest growing population in our schools.
Mhm.
And if we want to have those kids attracted to and stay as part of our programs, we need to do a better job of communicating, understanding, accepting, equity issues of bringing them into our program. So what were some of the things you did to have success in that situation as a young white director? And right, I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah.
and a young lady too at that time, and going in, and those things I'm sure still transfer out to what a lot of directors are working through now.
Right, because when I got there, I did not even know they were at 49% Hispanic and 50% African American, and I had one Anglo kid in the band.
Mhm.
And one of the first days, I said to him, "You guys sound like the Salvation Army band on a cold winter's night." And I got a phone call that night, and I learned that the one Anglo kid in my band's dad was director of the Austin Salvation Army Band. So, we all put our
You offended the one white kid in the band.
yeah, right.
That's the one
The other
white-
kid- but I mean,
Yes.
really, that I had no experience with either Hispanic or the African American culture. You can imagine coming from Mississippi, for heaven's sakes. But what I did was, and the first thing I did was I said, guys, I want to pronounce your names correctly, and I know I can't. So who wants to be my translator? And so one of the kids volunteered, and they read the roll for me until I learned how to pronounce that. And it's all a matter of trust. If the kids know that you're going to hold their feet to the fire because you care, it got to a point where I had to run them out of the band hall at night. And they were some of the best kids in the world, and I learned as much from them, more so probably than they learned from me, because they had never had any success. The lowest you could make was a 4. And of course they were so used to being, the worst band in town. And I was there for 2 years, and the first year I took them to contest, we made a 1 on stage. It was the first one they'd ever made. And they made a 2 in sight reading. And the only reason they didn't make a 1 in sight reading, because they were pretty darn well prepared, was that I said, "Kids, you could have read that. What happened?" And one of the kids said, "We were scared of those 3 white men." And there were 3 white judges, and they were sitting here like this, and it just scared the kids to death. And they just choked and, didn't even put air through their horns. But that was such an education for me, and what a great question, because it also taught me that I needed to learn to say things in a multiplicity of ways, and it really made me a better teacher. I also learned, I'd go in the teacher's lounge every day. I learned I have a great vocabulary of Hispanic profanity. And the reason for that is I go in and say, "What does such and such mean?" And they go, "Oh, don't say that." So they translate. I go back and say, No, don't say that." So that before I learned to speak Spanish a little bit better, I learned the profanity before I learned the nouns and the verbs and the, the gender of all of that. But
Like all good native speakers, right?
yeah, exactly. But the thing is, kids are kids.
Mhm.
And I really believe that, and I know you guys know this too. I've been in situations where I've gone out to work with a band in the middle of nowhere, and they had no reason whatsoever to have a fine band program. They didn't have the money. They didn't have a lot of kids in band. They couldn't even have sectionals after school because the school buses had to be, the whole 9 yards. And yet they played really well. Why? Because the person on the podium knew how to teach them and made them believe. Another
Awesome.
quick funny story, they wanted to give me a present at the end of the first year. And so I found this out later. The person collecting the money, they wanted to buy me a plaque. And they had money in the locker, and somebody broke into the locker and stole the money. So they didn't have money to give me a plaque. So at the concert, they walked up with this sack, and they opened it up, and there were 3 of the same dress. It was like a muumuu back in the day. It had, flowers, definitely not me. But, I'm thinking, well, here's a large and a medium and a small. And I said, "Well, we didn't know your size." Well, I found out later that they shoplifted them. And so here I am. I mean, the kids wanted so badly to give me a present. And I'm thinking, how am I going to handle this? And I said, well, I got the band officers together and we went back to the department store, and I'd called ahead and explained. And I said, let's go back. The medium's going to fit me fine. And let's take the other two back. And, oh, miss, they're going to throw us. And I said, no, no, no. I'm going to pay for this one because I love it so much. And the guy was so nice to the kids. But, I still have that moo. I only wore it once.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Rich, you're up again.
This is fun. This is just so much fun because we're dealing with so many weird things with kids and trying to keep them motivated. And I think the one thing, just the fact they know that we're there for them and
Yes.
and believe in them, and that seems to go a long way. I'm in my 30th year of teaching, and so I know what you said about looking back, and you try not to look back. You're always looking forward. But if you could have a do-over in something in your life, past, whether it's just a specific incident or a period of time, what would it be?
Oh, gee. Okay, going back to college, I spent a lot more time playing piano because my piano was I just enough to get by, which makes score study. If I couldn't sightseeing, I'd be toast. There are a number of pieces that I would not play again because I was a little over ambitious with, with the Allen band. I played the Bach Prelude and Fugue the Bach Mailman Prelude and Fugue in B flat minor, and that was, I had to do it again. I probably wouldn't have done that the first year. So there are all those tunes, but again, great question because that's how we learn, right? Irish tune with my second band wasn't the smartest thing I'd ever done. They loved it, and I had to teach my guts out to make sure that they could do justice to it. But those are some of those. I wouldn't trade any. I wouldn't do it differently, I don't think, actually, because it was such a good learning experience. How many of us have this list of I'll never do that again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only people that have problems is what is it that Einstein says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You make a mistake and you say to yourself, I'm never going to do that again.
Oh, that's great. Super. All right, who's next here? We're back to Kathy. Go get her, Kathy.
Okay, well, can we go the other direction? If you, as a musician, or I don't know, in something in your personal life or anything, is there something that's still in your bucket list, something you really want to do that you haven't done yet, or some goal that you have out there that you're working on that you would be willing to share with us?
I'm still working on Italian because I spend a lot of time in Italy and I spend a little time every day doing that. So that's one of my bucket list goals. The other is that I try to, now that I'm retired, I'll get a score every month or 6 weeks and study it. For example, the last major work I did was John Mackey's Wine Dark Sea. And I doubt very seriously that I'll ever be able to program that entire piece because if you're doing an all-state band, that would take up the whole program. But just professionally, always trying to learn. And I see something here, if possible, would one of you get in the question from attendee Matthew Arau?
Yeah, I can't see it, or else I would have asked you. I don't know where it is.
Okay, I use the ancient Chinese healing practice of Qigong, yeah, or like Tai Chi. And the question is, how has Qigong influenced your personal wellness and conducting style and gestures? And that's great because we were talking, Carole, about way back when I was working with the people at the Tennessee Arts, and we get up every morning and do a Tai Chi exercise. And I do that with all of my conducting workshops because that slow motion really translates to good control. But it also, and it's interesting that, and thanks for that question because I just finished something called Just Breathe that I'm doing for Con Selmer. I just recorded it, which is why I still have my Con Selmer shirt on. It's a 15-minute segment about breath as stress relief. And I start every morning with Tai Chi or Qigong. And it has to do with meditating and mindfulness and breath. And that sounds like ooh, but I just finished this presentation And I did about a month's worth of research because I wanted to be able to explain why breathing correctly, and I'm not talking about the deep breathing that we teach for wind instruments. I'm talking about the type of breath that we take in, and try this right now. Just take a deep breath in through your nose and then sigh. Just doing that lowers your heart rate. And it sends all kinds of chemicals through your body, like endorphins and serotonin and dopamine and more scientific things than you really wanted to know. But it's practiced like that. And speaking of Matthew Arrell, he has written a book that's coming out at Midwest, and it's called Upbeat. How many of you know Matthew? Well, he's one of the most upbeat people in the world. It talks about mindfulness, and he talks about, it has some breathing exercises. It is a wonderful book. So again, finding another discipline. Running. Do you run? Do you walk? I like to cycle because my knees are shot from running for years, but exercise is good. And when I was doing this presentation, one of the things I ran into was a Japanese practice called Shirin Yoku. And I don't know if you've ever heard it. I hadn't. What it translates roughly is forest bath. And what the Japanese do is go out and enjoy the ambiance of the forest. And isn't that a cool idea? We get to where, there are never enough hours in the day to do everything that we need to do, right? But if you don't go and get rid of some of that cortisone that's screaming through your body, it's a good way to be unhealthy. So, hey, Matthew, wherever you are, good question.
Thanks, Paula.
You bet. Oh,
All right. Yeah, I was going to say, we are moving on to Tracy now. Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I had a question, but I'm actually going to shift gears. I know you are a big proponent of self-care and balancing work and life. And it seems like more and more as we're coming back into some sense of normalcy with the COVID situation and everything, just feeling overwhelmed and overworked and exhausted. How do you have suggestions for pushing through that and still finding those ways to latch on to exercise or to latch on to other self-care practices when it just seems like it's harder to be motivated to do that nowadays?
And in my mind, I get up, especially with COVID, I have a routine. I get up and I do Tai Chi, then I exercise and do weights and all of this stuff. And every morning my mind says, you did this yesterday, you really don't need to do it today. And I don't know who that person is. I can't, if anybody can explain that to me, let me know. But I push through that and just have this, the Tai Chi is just a little 15-minute. And if I can't do anything else, I do that. But if you can just push yourself through that, there's a thing called box breathing that kids like to do a lot because Navy SEALs do it. Navy SEALs do it before they go into combat to focus and to really relax, lower that adrenaline level. And then they do it afterwards to wind down again. And box breathing is just simply, let's say you're going to take the air in for 4 counts, and we'll do it. Let's do box breathing. Here we go. Okay. So you're going to go in through the nose for 4, hold for 4, out through the mouth for 4, hold for 4, and do the cycle again. So relaxing the shoulders and, a little bit. Now here we're going to go in for 4 through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just hold. 2, 3, expel. Hold. 2, 3, 4, inhale. Eyes closed. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Expel and get rid of all it. And just a simple little exercise like that. If you get home at night and you're really tired, and who isn't, right after you've taught all day, and you think, I've got to do X, Y, Z, and I need to do my lesson plans, or I need to write a chapter for this book or something, if you'll just do this little breathing exercise for 5, 6 minutes, all of a sudden you're shooting all sorts of great chemicals through your body, and your brain's going, ooh, I'm alive again. It helps. I know it sounds crazy, but in January, check in the Conn Selmer thing and check out Just Breathe. It's about 15 minutes, and I've got about 8 different breathing exercises. And check out Matthew's book. And somebody asked, what is LHB? And it's been translated for Longhorn Band. Hook 'em. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to shoot it back over to Rachel now.
Okay, all right. Well, you've won all sorts of awards. Is there any that you're particularly proud of that you think, okay, that's pretty cool that I won that one?
Yes and no. I mean, I've been fortunate to have been recognized with some awards, but you know what? I'm happiest when I'm standing in front of a group and people are clapping for the kids.
Right.
I mean, real honestly, that makes, and I wouldn't want to list any one because I'd leave out another one, and that probably wouldn't be a good idea. But, and I mean, you know, that's all really nice, and we all have our collection of plaques. But, you know, at the end of the day, and here we go, I just said I don't look back much, but what I do look back at are those faces and those sounds. And it always
Absolutely.
makes me smile.
Now I have a piggyback to that then. So, you know, your guest conducting and such, and you're working with the kids is your favorite. Now, what is the piece when you get to conduct it at an honor band or an all-state or something? Do you have a piece that you're just like, this is the one I love? You can't, you know, it's a treat for you every time you do it.
This is going to sound like a cop-out, but I really mean this. Anything I do with an honor band, I really love. If I don't believe in it, if I don't own it, then I don't want to do it. There's one piece that has resonated in the last few years simply because we're going through so much negativity, and that's a piece called Pacem. I don't know if you all know it. It starts out with some brass solos, and it's a slow, beautiful piece, and of course, Pacem means peace. And it's a piece that I can teach a lot with, you know,
Awesome.
and because to me that, you know, if the kids don't feel what's going on, then I haven't done my job. And I think a lot of that is just getting the kids to use their own imagination. What's a piece, if there's not a storyline, and it doesn't has to be, give me an adjective. What does this section make you feel? And the kids start relating to that, and it becomes, you know, music on another level.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
I think if I had to take one piece,
Oh.
excuse me, if I had to take one piece on that desert island type thing, it would probably be the Doll Sinfonietta. I think that is one of the most incredibly beautifully crafted pieces in the world. And I'm old enough to have known Ingolf Dahl and actually played when he came to the University of Texas. I didn't play trumpet. I played bass clarinet because I wanted so much to play, and they had too many trumpets. So, but it, you know, that's one of those keeper pieces, right?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rich, I think you're up.
There you go, unmuted there. So I was interested when Carole was going through your bio and sort of things and the many different directions you could have gone in your life. You know, your interests, math, physics, English. And of course, you know, your parents probably wanted to see you be successful and make a lot of money in some big, you know, field and everything. Did your parents live long enough to see your success of what you do now? And if they did, what did they think about it?
Well, there was a dichotomy there. My dad wanted me to follow him and major in engineering. I got those math genes, whether I wanted or not, right? My mom just wanted me to get married. So my dad died very young. He had a massive heart attack when he was 49. So no, he did not get to see me even become a band director, a successful band director. And the mom did, but she was, you know, oh, honey, you're going to go play in Chicago. Well, how's the shopping? So, you know, she had some different priorities, but, you know, parents are parents. Mother was pretty much horrified when she found out I wanted to be a band director. And here's the kicker. I have a younger sister. Guess what she did? She's a band director.
Wow, that's interesting. You and I share something. My father passed away when he was 48. So, and I had just started my career as an Air Force musician. And I was so concerned as he was sick with cancer. I was in basic training, and I talked to my stepmother about the whole thing, and she goes, "Hey, he's happy that you're moving ahead with what you love doing. So
Mhm.
I'm sure your dad probably felt the same way about you. So that's really cool to hear from you. That means a lot to me. Thanks, Paul.
You bet. I just see a question somebody asked if I started writing my biography yet. No. I think it would probably be too boring.
No way. Guess you need to start writing or dictating or something. There's nothing boring at all. Not possible. Kath.
My turn. Just a curiosity question. When you sit down to listen to music for the joy of it for yourself, what do you listen to? What do you like for your own personal joy?
Oh, wow. My sister gave me Alexa, is that right? That little black thing? Okay. And I never thought I'd use it, but I was sitting down one day and I was reading and I said, Alexa, play a Mozart serenade. It was like, whoa. Next, Alexa, play a Beethoven sonata. And I started listening to things again that I hadn't listened to in years. For years, I started my day every day with the Bach cello suites. And just because it was kind of an ear cleansing experience. But I also, when I'm driving places, I'll just switch around and try to listen to what the kids are listening to. Can't do it too often because some of the words are, I mean, good Lord, but none, I mean, I think that's necessary because if you listen past the words, there's an art there too. So, but I love Renaissance choral music. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. The Renaissance. Oh man.
Oh yeah. Not to mention Renaissance brass, being a brass player.
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Oh yeah. And I was lucky because I sang in college too. They were looking for and that has been a great, sometimes we get so myopic in our disciplines. But when you think about the choral literature, it's hundreds of years ahead of our wind band literature. So if all we're ever doing is listening to wind band literature, not the great orchestral pieces and certainly the choral pieces, we're really limiting our own education. And Alexa's fun. Every once in a while, she'll play a recording that I can't. It's like, oh my God, that was like the London Symphonia of Botswana or something. You can hear some pretty bad recordings, but you said something too that kind of struck a chord because you said, what do you listen to for enjoyment? I realized, gosh, a number of years ago that when I went to a performance, I was always in judging mode and I didn't enjoy what I was hearing because I was looking, I was listening, oh my gosh, that's a little out of it. And I thought, PC, you're going to spend the rest of your life listening to music and these kids are doing the best they can. Sit back and enjoy it. And that paradigm shift really changed the way I listen to young musicians. Not to say that they don't play really, really well, but there's a difference between saying, I want to listen to this because it's, they're doing their best. Hey, that was a really cool moment. Instead of, in measure 33, the oboe player, fracked a note or something.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's something I struggle with to teach my kids is to listen as a critic, yes, but then listen for joy too. There's a couple different ways to approach what you're listening to. So thanks for sharing that.
Amen. Hey, Jen, I'm glad you're there. I'm just looking at some people in the chat.
Tracy, do you have a question?
I'm going to piggyback off of the last question and ask you what your guilty pleasures are, or something that we might be surprised by.
Oh, I don't think it would surprise you. First of all, wine, and especially with COVID, I have cases of wine that were delivered, and of course, and so you guys are ever in town, I'm here. Come out to Black Dog Ranch. I love to share. Chocolate is something that, oh man, it is a way guilty pleasure, and I have to just go a couple of weeks without sugar or otherwise I'll just get into where chocolate is. My food pyramid is wine, chocolate, vegetables, and other stuff.
Awesome. Rachel?
Well, I was going to say we have about 5 minutes left. Carole, so I was going to pass it back to you. So if we have closing thoughts or any final questions?
Yeah. I think we could go on for a long time. I want to turn the tables a minute. I want to ask Paula. Paula, what's something that you feel strongly about, something that you want to talk about that nobody ever asked you about? Is there anything that comes to mind that's like, oh, here's something I've been dying to say or ask?
Yeah, but I won't do it because it would be political in nature, and
Oh,
this is probably not the right uh, venue to talk about that.
mhm.
Other than saying, if we make America kind again and cut out all this nonsense, we might have a democracy. But the other thing and I do talk about this a lot, is that sometimes I think, and guilty as charged, especially when I was a young director, we're so busy trying to figure out how to fix things, make it band sound better, make them play in tune and in tone and in time, that we overlook the reason that we got into this crazy profession in the first place. And that is the joy of those moments when the whole becomes exponentially greater than the sum of its parts. And we make music that you never, ever forget. And it is those moments, and I know everybody that, oh, look at the kitty. I know everybody who is listening, and everybody, of course, everybody here has those moments. And that's why we do what we do. We're not going to vacation in the south of France or drive a Lamborghini. Although I will say that having been a teacher and being on Texas teacher retirement, I don't ever have to worry about going hungry. And I wouldn't trade all of those musical moments for all the Lamborghinis in the world.
I will say, from the first time I met you and really got to spend some time talking to you, which was at the Arts Academy in Tennessee, at Belmont University, 2000, what did we say, 5 or 6, quite
Yeah.
a long time ago. But what struck me then was how diverse your interests were. And that is something that we have in common.
Mhm.
And there's no end to my curiosity about things. And I recognize that in you, and always found it to be great fun to see what you were interested in and what you were looking at. And I think that, to me, that's one of my favorite things about your personality. I'll ask you one final, it's kind of a deep question.
Well, before
Do
you
you
do,
think,
just let me interject just one thing. I
yes,
think that great teachers are Renaissance men and women on, you know
uh,
what? And
mhm.
when I talk to band directors, I am amazed at how many people started out in another major and then realized they couldn't live without music. So yeah, I mean, that's the greatest thing
Mhm.
about what we do. There are no
Mhm.
limits to what we can apply to what we do on the podium. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, when you think about yourself and what makes you tick and who you are, and I had my own personal answer to this years ago when somebody else was shooting me down, and I had to think about, wait a minute, they're letting me know they don't like me at all, but what do I like about myself? And I found so much solace in being able to articulate what about myself I found satisfying and core to me. And when I could articulate what it was and say what it was, I realized it did not matter one bit whether anybody else agreed or disagreed. And that was the essence of who I was. Have you found that? I know you have. What what is Paula at the core? What is Paula?
My
Who is Paula?
my grandmother shared a quote with me years and years ago, and it's Eleanor Roosevelt that says that no one has the ability to make you feel inferior without your consent. And that's the way I've always been. I am my own most severe critic, but I also am darn determined to find solutions to whatever it is that's stopping me from doing whatever I want to do. And I also think that and again, this is just not music, but anything, if anybody's going to be good at it, they have to be passionate about it. You can't stand on the podium and make music if you don't feel it. I mean, you can, but the end result is not going to be very musical. And so I think that, you know, if there were one word to ask what makes me tick, it would be passion or stubbornness. My friends would say stubbornness. I would say both.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's so generous of you to give us an hour of your time tonight. Is there anybody else out there in viewerland that would like to throw a question or comment in the chat right quick? Please do it right now and get it in there. I see Jemima. Jemima, are you still on the other side of the world in the other
Down
hemisphere?
under. Hello, Jemima. We're going to miss you at Midwest this year. You're not traveling halfway around the world, nor.
Yeah, and it takes a while to get there, doesn't it?
It does indeed, but I'll tell you what, man, that I've been working in Australia with Mick Youngblood, Jemima's husband, for years, and what he and people like Jemima have done, and Joe, they're people, and just like we have people in the United States who are always building and building and building. The bands have grown by leaps and bounds in Melbourne. And I hope I can go back there sometime, because I just love the Aussie spirit. Is just like, hey, how you going? You know,
How you going?
how you going? And good on you. It took me a while to realize that good on you meant good on you. You learn new languages in Australia. It's good to see you, Jemima.
This is just it's a Zoom is such a wonderful thing. Like, we have Jemima, she's in Australia. We have Lynn Miramira on here. Lynn's in Hawaii, unless she's traveling and not.
Aloha.
Yeah. And we have, I see Wisconsin, I see Pennsylvania, I see the far hinterland of Texas, way over there. People from everywhere. And isn't it wonderful that first we're all brought together by music, and then we have Zoom to bring it tangible right here. So last question, Paula, if I said we got tomorrow afternoon free, tomorrow free, Paula, we're going to go do something fun, the craziest, funnest thing we can do tomorrow afternoon, what will it be?
I would jump on my bicycle and go riding out in the hill country.
Sounds like fun.
And not be able to walk the next day, but it would be a
And
good
that's
ride.
okay. Yeah, and the endorphins would be racing. It'd be
That's
great.
right.
Okay. Paula, you're a treasure, and that is an understatement. I'm sure there's not a soul in that viewer list that's watching or who may watch it later that would disagree with me. Oh, you're a treasure, and your enthusiasm and positivity and just love for life is contagious, to say the least. And music is, I mean, that's all there. Music's icing. Your love for life is what it's just so obvious. And I feel very thankful that you're willing to spend a little time with us and share some of you in your life. This interview will be recorded. It is recorded, and it will be available for others to watch, and for those of us now to come back and enjoy it later with great memories on YouTube. And will we see you at Midwest this year?
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see you. And let's go have a nice bottle of wine and a great meal and some chocolate. And I'm in.
I'm in.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists, Tracy and Kathy and Rachel and Rich, for being active, involved ASBDA members and being part of this fun series of interviews that we've been doing these last several months. And you bring a lot to the table, and we appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paula. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Keep making music, gang.
Thanks, Paula.